Information Regulator.
On the go, Elijah Mhlanga is getting reaction to that judgment delivered a short while ago. Let's listen in.
And as you've heard, it's struck of the roll with costs. That also sends a message to the things that we do, that we really need to apply our mind to them. And so what will the implications be for that? As far as that matter that we've lodged in the court, it's there, it's ongoing. And in there's detail of the issues that we are raising with the Information Regulator, which we want the courts to mediate on, because the outcome of that process will be important, not just for the department, but for the Information Regulator itself, in terms of how it interacts with organizations like us that handle millions and millions of people's information. So we are seeking that legal clarity so that we can set up systems that will fully comply with the POPIA.
Was this overreach by the Information Regulator, do you think?
No, it wouldn't be overreach. They are trying to do their work and they are within their rights to do that. We also need to remember the Information Regulator is a fairly new organization that is also still trying to find its feet in terms of its legal responsibilities. We need to also understand where they're coming from. They need to exert their authority. They need to make sure that their presence is felt, because their mandate is also critical in the governance in the country. So their establishment is appropriate. It's something that we need. But now let's get down to the detail. How do we comply with the Act as they are the custodians of it? So we're working together. The courts are actually very helpful in terms of interpreting the provisions in the Act and how we should work around those complex terminology that's there and some of the requirements that we need to comply with.
The lawyer for the Information Regulator did mention yesterday that there was a policy of issuing out consent forms to learners if they agree that their matric results are published. That was and he did mention that that was the department essentially admitting that they actually need to allow learners to give consent for their results to be published. Your comment on that?
Well, it's one of the provisions in the Act that there has to be consent for processing any information that belongs to persons. So remember, we have a court judgment which said you don't need to do that, just go ahead and publish as long as you use exam number. So we didn't even need to do that, but we've done it anyway. The reason we're doing it is because we want to comply with the Protection of Personal Information Act, just like any other organization in this country. So our attempt at compliance should not be used against us. It's not an admission of anything. It's actually a positive step, because it's not just the Department of Basic Education, by the way. All of us, as long as you handle information that belongs to people, you need to comply with the Act. So here, this situation should actually be an eye-opener for anyone. Whether you are in private or public sector, it doesn't matter. You need to pay attention to what is happening in this process, because you too might end up here if you don't comply. So we are attempting to comply with the Act. It's a new Act. It came into effect in July, the 1st of July 2020. We are all trying to understand the implications of complying with that Act. So we are here because we are committed to complying, and that we are committed also to engaging further with the custodian of that Act, who is the Information Regulator.
Just on the issue of that.
Right, of course, we have AfriForum here, who we know also joined this court case. Ilana Bailey joins me right now just to hear their side and how they receive, of course, the judgment by Judge Ronald Home. Of course, it's a win for AfriForum. It's a win for the Department of Basic Education. Just take us through your thoughts this hour.
It's also a win for the matriculants who were anxious that they were not going to see their matriculation numbers in the papers. So we are very relieved. We see that as a victory for public interests, and we are glad that they will have the same opportunity that matriculants had in previous years. Obviously, we're also very relieved about the cost order. And we hope that the appeals case will be heard very soon in future, so that the matriculants of 2025 won't have the same anxious situation that the matriculants of 2024 had.
Basically not leaving everything to the last minute, and that is really what the judgment touched on very extensively, of how did the regulator leave everything to the 11th hour, even the enforcement order that was only issued mid-November.
Exactly, and then also what she touched on, which I feel is the most important issue, is what is the interest of the children. On the one hand, people who don't want their results published, and on the other hand, people for whom it is really of great importance. So we hope that the Department of Basic Education will get the system working where people can give permission or deny permission when they register to write matric, and that next year we will not face a similar issue.
The issue around respecting the law and the Constitution, that ultimately also now becomes a focus of this ongoing battle back and forth. The POPIA Act is here to stay. It is a law. It's part of the Constitution. It has to be respected. As AfriForum, would you agree that that is moving forward, what needs to happen? And that ultimately means that if the law says that there needs to be an alternative way of publishing the matric results, then perhaps that's the direction that we need to move in.
Yes, we've got a year to work on that now. And I think many people think a case like this is not really of great importance. It's just matriculants, it's just 1 year. But it is of great importance because it is giving new interpretation and depth to the POPIA Act. And every case like this makes the law even stronger and clearer. Generally, laws are drafted to be quite vague, and then regulations, but also court judgments give greater clarity on what that law actually contains and how we can apply it. So that's why we also felt that this is a case that is important enough to get involved in. Obviously for the matriculants and for our members who feel strongly about it, but also in order that in future we may have greater clarity about the POPIA Act.
Should we see change come moving forward, because later in the year we will have a bigger case that will delve into the deeper merits of this particular matter. But moving forward, what would you like to see happen with the matric results? What is your wish?
I think the best outcome will be that the people who feel strongly about it, who want to have that tradition that continues, or who are in areas where they need to have the results in another way than approaching their school directly, that they will have access to that information, and that if somebody feels he doesn't or she doesn't want their results to be aired publicly, that they have a way of making sure that that doesn't happen.
All right, thank you so much there. Ilana Bailey from AfriForum, just bringing us into, their confidence about what it is that they were hoping for, and the fact that they're happy that the judgment is in their favor. The Department of Basic Education also reiterated that stance, that it was really about urgency. And ultimately, why did the regulator wait for so long? Judge Tolme also touching on that ultimately they had from January 2022 to bring that particular application before the courts and challenge the release of the matric results, and they waited until the 11th hour. Even the enforcement order, they had a whole year to issue that enforcement order, but the enforcement order was only issued in mid-November last year, and that is how obviously the judge reached the conclusion that there is no basis for urgency. That means that next week the traditional method of releasing the matric results in the newspapers prevail. It's back to studio.
Patricia Vasachi, thanks very much indeed. More reaction to that breaking news story without a doubt throughout the afternoon. On point.